views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. When Councilman Ruben Diaz Sr. was elected to the City Council in the fall, it opened up the seat in the Bronx's 32nd Senatorial District. It will be filled by a special election on Tuesday, April 24th. Tonight, we present the debate for the Bronx's 32nd Senatorial District, which serves the Morrisania, Melrose, Longwood, West Farms, Parkchester, Soundview, and Unionport areas of the Bronx. All three candidates who are in the race are with us tonight, and we will introduce you to them. They are from the Repubican Party, Patrick Delices, who is a Hunter College professor in the Department of Africana and Puerto Rican Latino Studies. Thank you for being with us, sir. And from the Democratic Party, it is Luis Sepulveda, the current Assemblyman in the 87th Assembly District in the Bronx. And from the Reform Party, it is Pamela Stewart-Martinez, who is the president of the Bronx High School Federation. Tonight's debate is co-sponsored by the Bronx Times, the Norwood News, the Bronx Free Press, and the League of Women Voters, a nonpartisan political organization that advocates for informed and active participation in government and works to increase understanding of major public policy issues. We are thrilled to have them all on board with us. Primary election is Tuesday the 24th, and all eligible voters are encouraged to vote. Candidates, let's review the rules. In tonight's debate, I will direct a question to one candidate. That candidate will respond, and then we will have a free-flowing dialogue that each candidate can participate in, with the original respondent having the final say on the question before the next question is asked. At the end of the program, each candidate will be given the opportunity to deliver a one-minute closing statement. So please note that tonight's questions include those submitted by the candidates themselves. By prior agreement, the first question will be directed to you, Mr. Delices. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start here. After meeting with the governor and others, the IDC, the Independent Democratic Conference, said it will fold and the 8 members will fall back into the Senate's Democratic Party. Will this be helpful or hurtful in getting meaningful legislation passed? And also, maybe you could talk in general about the thin Republican majority in the Senate and how it affects the Bronx.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you, Bronx Talk, and thank you, the people of the Bronx, for inviting me to participate in this debate and to represent the 32nd Senatorial District in the South Bronx. Gary, throughout my life, I worked very hard, and I picked myself up by the bootstraps. I come from the poorest country in the Americas, in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti. So I know what poverty looks like. And I worked as an adjunct professor at Hunter College. I worked in the Department of Career Development. And now I'm engaged in public service, running for office, running as a candidate, Republican candidate. Now, in terms of your question, my position is simple. I feel that the Democratic Party has not held its responsibility to the people of the South Bronx, whether it's the council seat, whether it's the New York State Assembly, whether it's the governor, whether it's the mayor, or whether it is the state Senate. The Democratic Party has consistently failed the people of the South Bronx. So it is time for a change. It is time to look at a new candidate who has the background and experience. It's time to look at who's the best and who's the brightest and to put that person in office so that person could properly represent the people of the South Bronx and not represent special interest groups or a particular party that has consistently, over the last 50 years, failed the people of the South Bronx.
Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, I have to obviously respectfully disagree with Mr. Delices, because if you look at the Republican Party, the head of that Republican Party, Donald Trump, is someone who stands for everything that we need in the Bronx. He's fought for against women's rights. If you look at his policies, everything is there about protecting women. He's rejected. If you look at criminal justice reform is the new Jim Crow in this country. They've resisted that. The Republicans in the New York State Senate. The reason we don't have more reform in terms of criminal justice reform is because the Republican Party resisted at all costs to do that. When we have more funding for housing and education program, it is the Republican Party that fails to do so. So if you want to talk about an entity that has failed the South Bronx, you look no further than what the Republicans in the Senate have done. They're against choice. They've advocated for policies that certainly would hurt the residents that we have in our community. So the Democratic Party, yes, there's more work to be done, but if you're going to run as a Republican, you have to face the facts that is your party that has caused the most damage, the most concerns. You know, we're talking about also immigration rights. They're opposed to DACA. They're opposed to the Dreamers. These are policies that the Democratic Party has embraced and which the Republican Party has resisted till the very end.
Okay. Others? Let's let Ms. Pamela.
Thank you. Here's my concern. My concern is this. We have Democrats who actually chose to caucus with the Republican Party. And now they're saying that, oh no, we're going to now caucus with the Democrats. But you were elected as a Democrat. So to me, I mean, I guess I'm in between Mr. Patrick and Luis in this, because I feel that our current politicians in our communities who's supposed to fight for us in Albany, I'm not talking Washington, D.C. I'm talking Albany. There is enough that could have been done in Albany to protect my community here in the Bronx, and it wasn't done. And it was because there were members of the IDC who chose to cross over. And now, because they're afraid that they're going to get a little competition and no one's going to protect their seat, now they want to fall back into the fold. And I'm sorry, I'm not 100% sold on it. I think someone used the word tentatively, you know? So to me, I don't know if you could really, truly trust that person.
You wanted to respond, sir?
Absolutely. There's this trick that the Democratic Party used where they hoodwink and bamboozle the people of the South Bronx. And this is the hoodwink and bamboozle tactic. We're not talking about federal government. We're talking about state government, right?
Let's be specific so we can move it on.
It's state and local. And specifically, you have a Democratic mayor and a Democratic governor, both who cannot fix the New York City subway system. In addition, you got a Democratic mayor and a Democratic governor who disrespect the people of the South Bronx so much that they want to build a prison in the South Bronx, use $10.5 billion to build a prison, not to build schools, not to create employment opportunities, not to generate wealth for the people of the South Bronx, who has the South Bronx has the highest poverty rate. So it's not about it's not about being a Trump Republican, it's about doing what's right for the people. Well, look, and there's some of us who have been Democrats and been in political parties for quite a long time, and yet the South Bronx has yet to change.
But again, Mr. Delices, if you're going to be honest about the people from the South Bronx, one of the areas where we need a lot of help, again, I've been a very big proponent of criminal justice reform in the state of New York because I think it is unconstitutional. I think it impacts.
But criminal justice does not let him prison in the South Bronx.
It impacts young men and women of color adversely in a way that's unfair. It's dependent on your zip code and the amount of money you have in the bank. We have, as a member of as a vice chair of the Black, Latino, Hispanic, Asian Caucus, I was one of the co-chairs that pushed like hell to get criminal justice reform in the last 2 years. And no doubt about it, it was the Republicans who resisted. They wanted to conflate that with other programs, pork barrel programs for them. It is your party that, unfortunately, resisted this year's criminal justice reform. We don't have reform on discovery. There are a lot of things they tried to block monies for raise the age, which will be fully implemented. There are a lot of programs that the Republican Party just resists for no justification because they want to resist. When you talk about the opioid crisis, before it started impacting white communities, it was about lock them up and put them in prison. Once it started impacting white communities, then it became about compassion. And all that resistance comes from the Republican Party.
Okay,
I just want to say one other...
And then you'll get the final word, sir, and we'll move on.
Okay, you know what? See, here's where me being a true grassroots candidate comes into play, because when I look at certain things, when I look at our governor's budget and I see that he allocates $16 million to to prevent gang violence in Long Island, and we don't have our Democrats in our neck of the woods fighting for $6 million for our gang violence situation that we have in our communities. So when we talk about Democrats, we need a new group of Democrats. We need a new group of people to come in there and fight for us.
Okay, let's end it there. Let you respond, and then I want to move on.
Simply put,
and do it quickly, please.
The Democratic Party has failed the people of the South Bronx. Pamela is correct. You have a governor who's allocating money to people in Long Island because of the opioid crisis. Where was the money allocated when there was crack cocaine in the South Bronx? Where was the money? No money was allocated when there was heroin in the South Bronx. No money is allocated even though the South Bronx has the highest drug addiction rate and the highest violent rate. And I'm not just spewing out statistics. This has been for the last 50 years. The Assemblyman mentioned something very quickly. He said the Republicans are the one that rejects certain policies. How could that be true when the Senate is dominated by Democrats and when the City Council is dominated by Democrats? New York City politics is dominated by Democrats. Governor and the mayor.
Thank you, sir. I have to, just a point of order. The Republicans have had the majority in the Senate. So, I mean, let's just be factual about it.
New York Senate. Okay. We're talking about the New York Senate, not the federal.
Well, but I mean, and some of these issues we talk about, MTA, transportation, schools, where, you know, these issues began under Giuliani and Bloomberg, which are not hardcore Democrats. I mean, we know they're Republicans. So you can't blame the Democratic Party for what's happened.
So what have the Democrats done thus far to fix
Bloomberg was a Democrat.
What they did was put $10.5 billion to build a prison in the South Bronx and allocate other money
Mr. Delices,
to Long Island.
can I just I'm going to ask that question. I'd appreciate it if you let me do that. So let's talk about the plan to close Rikers Island. The DA and others are on record saying closing it would be helpful to reform the criminal justice system. Most all Bronx politicians, all of them Democrats, have protested the mayor's decision to site one of the replacement sites in Mott Haven. Give me an idea of what your thoughts are on the closing of Rikers, and if that happens, there has to be some facility somewhere that deals with the prisoners.
Well, you know, we insist that we close Rikers. I think we're all in agreement on that. But in order to close Rikers, you have to take certain steps. You have to house these potential prisoners in the future. We had an extensive meeting with the mayor. We had an extensive meeting with the district attorney and all the other elected officials that represent the Bronx to talk about what options that we have. We're facing the NIMBY situation. People want them closed, but no one wants prisons in their backyard. Their communities, the site that was allocated by the mayor is up in arms because they felt like they've invested a lot in that community. Their property values, they're concerned about the property values decreasing and the quality of life in the area. And those are legitimate concerns. But we have to do something about, if we're going to close Rikers, where are we going to put these young men and women?
What do we do?
Well, I think you do smaller prisons. I've advocated for that. The mayor, the plan for the mayor's office was one prison to house all these individuals. I believe you should do 2 small ones, and one of them should be located right next to the courthouse because there are logistic problems. It'll cost us more money to get these prisons, to get the prisoners away in sites that you have to take travel with them. You have to have manpower. You have to have police. You have to have corrections. So let's do both of them closer to the prisons. But we have to do something because if we don't, then Rikers cannot be closed.
Okay.
And that's part of the plan. This is part of also, if you want to implement raise the age properly, you're going to have to do this. If not, we're going to have problems with raise the age. And that's too critical of a change in the criminal justice system not to do something for it.
Okay. Others respond?
Yes.
You first, Pamela, and then you, Mr. Delices. Sure.
Okay. So Here's the problem I have with having these prisons in my community, the 32nd District. We have the second highest number of shelters in that district. I think it's approximately 46 shelters. And when you say no one wants it in their area, you're absolutely right. No one wants it in their area, but Staten Island doesn't want it in their borough, and guess what? They're not having it. Staten Island doesn't want shelters, and guess what? They don't have shelters. What needs to happen is our community in the Bronx, we need to stand up and say, we need to be like Staten Island. We need to hold our current politicians' feet to the fire.
Just a point of clarification. So then are you for closing Rikers?
I am for closing Rikers.
And then what do you do with those facilities?
Okay. Studies have showed that there is a correlation with what happens in public schools and where children end up. You find that the higher number of suspension rates with a given student can predetermine the possibility of that student winding up
just to move it forward. So do you have a suggestion of where?
My suggestion is we need to focus in. We need to be proactive instead of reactive. We need to go into our schools and invest more money into our schools. We also need to, I believe that part of that criminal justice bill said that we were going to eliminate people being locked up for minimal crimes and allow them to come back and appear in court instead of keeping them in Rikers forever. That should eliminate a lot of people being held in Rikers.
Thank you. We're going to run out of time, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak.
My position is simple. They can't even fix Rikers Island. So you want to close it and build a prison somewhere else. If you can't fix Rikers, what makes you think you're going to fix another prison somewhere else? And if you want to close Rikers Island, build a prison in Park Avenue. Build a prison in Madison Avenue. Build a prison in Fifth Avenue.
Riverdale.
But don't build the prison in the South Bronx. There's already 2 prisons in the South Bronx. We're flooded with homeless shelters. We're flooded with drug centers. Use that $10.5 billion to invest and generate wealth and employment opportunities and job training for the people of the South Bronx. Okay. Keep Rikers open and fix and reform whatever situation and solve the problems that are in Rikers Island. But if you want to close Rikers Island, take it to Park Avenue, take it to Madison, take it to Fifth.
Thank you. You get the final word.
Sure. You know, obviously, we would prefer having it in areas where they're not as adversely affected. But the problem is what we have to take into consideration of some of the logistical nightmares that would occur and some of the expenses that we'd have to spend. And also, many of the individuals that are Rikers Island, a good portion of them come from the Bronx. And so do we want to have these families that have to go visit them in prison? Do we want to have them go to Staten Island, go to places that are away from their families? I think that would be counterproductive. We want to create an environment for these individuals that are, and remember, they're not going to be there forever. Lots of them are awaiting trial. But do we want to create a situation where these kids, these families, these young men and women have to go and travel to other counties to go visit their families, when in fact you can have a solution here that is fair and that can work, and that the parties, the players in here, in the county, can work with the mayor and the governor to make sure that we have the right solution. It's difficult, but we have to take a stand, and we cannot close Rikers unless we have this position.
Can I just comment one more on that? One more.
Well, we're going to just cut off on other questions.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'll be very quick.
I also have a problem.
I will. I promise. I'll be very quick. I also have another problem with it being closer to the courthouse, because the courthouse is near Concourse Village. Do you know how many schools are near Concourse Village? And also, the Mott Haven location that they're looking at is 4 acres of land. That is not big enough for a jail.
Assemblyman, did you want to respond?
Well,
to
yeah.
that, since you had made the
there
proposal?
are some requirements, some dimension requirements that the city has to abide by, some environmental requirements. And of all the factors that the city had to consider, the one that they thought fit all these requirements was the Mott Haven proposed site. Look, again, if I had my druthers, I'd have these prisons somewhere else. But we cannot be honest and have an honest discussion about closing Rikers unless we have an opportunity to put these prisoners somewhere else. And I don't want families to have to travel far away to stay close by to the individuals that may be incarcerated.
Okay, Pamela, poverty is a disease. It affects not only impoverished people, but has a ripple effect across every aspect of Bronx life. New York City child poverty rate is almost 40%, and cities like Troy and Syracuse have child poverty rates above 60%. Can this be addressed with government funding of social programs, or are there other answers?
There are so many other answers that need to happen. Let's start with, as I said before, education is the great equalizer. What happens in our community is that so many people in our community get a subpar education. And you cannot tell me that this isn't a social justice issue that's happening in our communities. When you look at the graduation rate within our communities, you look at the college readiness rate. Now, they'll say that the graduation rate improved, but that's only because we lowered the standards. They'll also say that there was an increase in college readiness, and you know what, we'll see how successful those students are. But more importantly, what concerns me is the opportunities that we're not having in our community. We're not given the opportunities to be entrepreneurs. There are so many things set against us because of redlining, because of lack of job training. In fact, I'll give you a prime example.
You got to move it along.
I will.
I'm
almost finished. Yes, I'm almost finished. I'll give you a prime example of that. There is a company that is in the Bronx. It's a boiler company, Eastco. That particular company, yes, he has a boiler.
You got to talk quick because
he wants to offer training for people to come in and learn welding and skills and everything, but he's not getting the contracts that he needs in order to hire people from the community and train them, and he has the facilities. This is the problem where government doesn't help the mid-sized businesses.
Poverty is a very complex issue, so many different areas that we can address. Now, I'm proposing a plan now that guarantees a basic income for every resident of New York State. It's a revolutionary plan that I'm pushing up in the legislature. What it says is that if you look at Northern European countries like Norway and Sweden, where they have these guaranteed income requirements, it has been very successful. When you give people money, they're going to pump that money more into the economy. And when you pump more money into the economy, you get more economic development and so forth. That's what I've been trying to do now for the last couple of months, and I'm working on, when I get to the Senate, to make sure that we have a basic amount of income for everyone so that we can then pump more money into the economy. You know, education.
Be quick. I want to give Mr. Delices a chance to respond. Go ahead.
As I mentioned earlier, I come from the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti. My dad, George Chardin Delices, came to the United States
I think you should get to the point about what you plan to do.
I will get to the point. Came to the United States. We were poor. In order to fix poverty in the South Bronx, you have to inject investment, capital investment in the South Bronx. You have to bring in investors. You have to bring in businesses.
Investment in what?
You have to bring investment in education, investment in job training. You have to get the union involved. But you don't bring a prison. You use that $10.5 billion. Instead of using it for the prison, you use it to bring businesses. You use it to bring job training. You use it for educational purposes in the South Bronx. Okay. And that's how you avoid or eradicate poverty.
We will let you have the final word on this.
Okay, so my final word is this. Mr. Sepulveda is working on this revolutionary program for the past few months, he says, but he's been in office for 6 years. He's had 6 years to bring this revolutionary program to the 87th Assembly District. Why wasn't that done then? And why wasn't that shared with the current state senator? So in my opinion, we need new people.
We need to cut you off. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we won't have time for closing statements, so I want to make sure everybody has a chance to do that. Mr. Delices, by earlier determination, you will deliver the first closing statement.
My statement is to the people of the South.
You have 60 seconds. Sir.
My statement is to the people of the South Bronx. On April 24, vote for Patrick Delices. Not only he's the best and the brightest, but he has nothing but love for the people of the South Bronx. The Democratic Party has continuously failed the people of the South Bronx. They have yet, with the last 50 years, have done anything to make the South Bronx better and safer. When you vote for Patrick Delices, don't look at the Republican Party. Vote for what I can do for you. Vote for someone with experience. Vote for someone with the background. I am here to make the Bronx better and safer, and you could count on Patrick Delices to do so.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sepulveda.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. I have been an assemblyman now for 6 years, and I think we have a long, good track history of success and hard work. I have been either the prime or co-prime or multiple prime sponsor of over 1,000 pieces, 1,000 bills. I have worked closely with our colleagues in government. We now have the biggest amount of investment in education. We just got $26 billion for education in the budget. That's $1 billion more than the governor had proposed.
30 seconds.
We have $200 million that are going into community schools to make sure that these community programs that are doing so well continue. We have $2 million for supplemental schools. On housing, I've pushed to get more money for our communities. We have now over $100 million for supportive housing for people that are about to lose their home. The government's about to pay for their fair market rent if they face eviction. And if you look at my track record, you'll see that the reason that I'm being supported by over 40 organizations, the governor, the mayor, and several not-for-profit organizations is because of the hard work that I've done.
Pamela Stewart-Martinez, your final thoughts.
Okay, so my final thought is this, and thank you everyone for viewing today. What's happening in politics right now is that we have a lot of politicians who have special interest connections. And what we need to do is we need to rally around people who are interested in the interest of the community. I am a grassroots candidate. I have been in the trenches. I am out there. I am in public housing speaking to people as early as 6 a.m., as late as 1 a.m. I am inside your schools. I'm speaking to your PTAs. I am speaking to your principals. I am speaking to the chancellor. I will be there for you. I will support you. I will listen to you. And I will be your ears and your voice in Albany. And that's why you should vote for me on April 24th. Thank you
very much. Patrick Delices, thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Luis Sepulveda, thank you. Pamela Stewart-Martinez, thank you.
Thank you.
You have exemplified the best of the electoral process in the Bronx, and we appreciate it. Candidates, while you might not agree on everything, I know you will agree with me that every eligible voter should come out to vote on April 24th. Also, we want to thank our co-sponsors, the Bronx Times, the Bronx Free Press, the Norwood News, and the League of Women Voters. For more information, please call the League of Women Voters at 212-725-3541. Next week, it will be the candidates in the Democratic primary for the special election in the 80th Assembly District. And we want to thank you for watching. Thank to our producer, Helen. Our director is William. And also, please make sure you vote on April 24th. Good night.
The BronxNet series Get to Know the Bronx has received 2 Emmy Award nominations. Your Bronx is being recognized. The series features exciting facts about your borough's people, places, and history. Visit www.bronxnet.tv to watch your outstanding Emmy-nominated series and get to know the Bronx.